A shy girl thought she'd just won a free makeover. That's all it was supposed to be. A quiet afternoon, some borrowed confidence, a new shade of lipstick. She never imagined the man holding the makeup brush was the Millionaire founder of the world's most popular beauty app, disguised as a stylist to test his final release. And he never expected her either. Not the way she sat, tentative but still. Not the way she looked at her own reflection, like she was trying to believe it could be hers. Not until she spoke, and not until he heard a sentence he had once read, printed on a user feedback form, unsigned, nearly buried in a sea of analytics. Beauty should never feel like a room you weren't invited into. It was her. The words that had made him pause, question everything, and quietly rebuild his entire company around the idea of belonging. And now, here she was, this girl who had lived her whole life in the quiet corners, convinced she wasn't, made to shine. Unknowing that she had already lit a spark, could someone who'd only ever lived in the shadows become someone else's light, just by daring to believe she deserved it? Sometimes, the things we see as small are the very things that change the world. People say luck finds you when you stop waiting for it. Ellie never believed that. At 27, she still worked a quiet office job, returned home alone, avoided mirrors for longer than a glance, and always chose a cafe seat closest to the door in case someone happened to notice her. Existing. So when she got an email from a new beauty app saying she'd been selected for a complimentary full makeover, her finger hovered over delete. Almost. Because the subject line read, "We saw something in you. Not you've won. Not today only, just, we saw something in you." It reached something in her she hadn't realized had gone quiet. 3 days later, Ellie stepped through the glass doors of the salon. No thumping pop music, no stylists shouting. Over blow dryers, the air smelled faintly of bergamot, beige leather chairs, warm lighting that softened everything into something dreamlike. She froze in the doorway. The receptionist, a girl with a pixie cut and warm, unhurried eyes, smiled as if she'd been waiting. "Ellie, right? We've been expecting you, expecting me." Her heart stuttered. "Your stylist will be right out. You're welcome to sit, or if you like tea, we have ginger, peppermint, and oolong." "Ginger," Ellie said. Her voice carried more walls than words. This wasn't her world. She was used to noisy salons where they asked perm or straighten, and ended with a glance that judged through the mirror. The stylist entered so quietly she only noticed when the side door clicked shut behind him. He wore a black shirt and a charcoal overcoat. No name tag. His hands were long, clean, graceful. His face had the angles of a sketch, sharp but unforced. And when he looked at her, he smiled. Not a professional smile, not polite, a quiet kind, as if he recognized something. "Hi, Ellie, I'm Kai. You're the stylist?" "That's right. Today it's all about you." She curled her fingers into the hem of her worn coat. Turtleneck, dark jeans, no lipstick, no blush. Nothing about her matched the elegance of the space around her. "Ready?" Kai asked, voice low and calm. She nodded. The kind of nod that says, "I don't know why I'm here, but I came anyway." The room behind the salon was made of mirrors and soft light. A single chair in the center. No other clients, but no cameras, just Ellie. Kai began by washing her hair, gentle, unrushed, like reading a poem only he could understand. He didn't ask about love. He didn't ask what she did for work. He asked just one thing. "Have you..." Ellie left the salon that day carrying something she couldn't name. It wasn't a dramatic transformation like in the viral before-after clips. There was no glittering reveal, no spotlight, just a feeling, a vague, tremulous sense that, for the first time, someone had looked at her without pity or projection, as if she'd been enough all along. But that feeling was fragile, delicate, like morning mist, beautiful, but not meant to last. The next morning, sunlight slanted through the sheer curtains. Ellie stood before her mirror, not to admire, to confirm. She searched for someone new, like the videos promised, But no, same pale skin, same tired eyes. Same face she'd been quietly apologizing for her entire life. She exhaled, lightly, like letting go of something she didn't even realize she'd hoped for. When she returned to the salon, a wide-brimmed hat shielded most of her face. She walked slowly, like someone re-entering a dream they didn't believe they were allowed to have. Kai greeted her without surprise, without urgency, just a steady gaze, like he'd been waiting for her to come back as she was. "Ginger tea?" he asked in that low, even voice. Ellie nodded. There was something deeply safe in being remembered, especially for something small, like her choice mattered. The salon was quiet today, not empty, but still. And for the first time, Ellie noticed the silence here didn't threaten. It wrapped around her like a light blanket, not enough to hide beneath, but just enough to let her breathe. Kai didn't rush. He sat across from her, a respectful distance, not close enough to read her too easily, not far enough to let her disappear. "What do you think makes someone beautiful?" he asked Ellie. Looked down at her hands, fingers threading through each other the way they always did when she felt misplaced in a conversation. A balanced face. "Like clear skin, or maybe confidence," she said softly, but just enough for him to hear. "And do you think you have any of those?" The question dropped into the quiet between them like a pebble into still water. No splash, but the ripple ran deep. Kai began brushing her hair, now curled into soft, slow waves. He didn't speak, but his touch was deliberate, careful, as if he was undoing memories tangled at the root. The first time she was called a background girl in a class photo, the teasing glance when she smiled too wide and showed her gums, things she'd never told anyone. But somehow Kai didn't need the words. His eyes, reflected in the mirror, asked gently, "Why have you been hiding from yourself for so long?" Ellie lowered her gaze. "If I really were beautiful," she whispered, "why do I always feel like I'm apologizing just for being here?" His hands paused. A hush fell over the room. Then softly, "Maybe no one ever said the opposite kindly enough for you to believe it." The weight slid from her shoulders. Subtle, like she had finally taken a breath after holding it for years. That day's makeup didn't shimmer, no dramatic contours, just a whisper of brightness at her eyes, a flush on her cheeks, and a deep berry stain on her lips, like the last hue of a sentence left unsaid. When they finished, Kai didn't reach for a camera. He simply looked at her through the mirror. "You don't owe anyone a perfect version of yourself," he said, "but you deserve a gentler gaze from your own reflection." Ellie said nothing, but as she walked out of the salon that afternoon, something in her had shifted. She was still the same girl, but she carried a key now, one someone had quietly returned to her, a key she didn't even know had been missing. Maybe you felt it too, like you weren't enough, not pretty enough, not loud enough, not worth pausing for. But sometimes, all it takes is one person looking at you the right way for you to finally start seeing yourself. The next day, Ellie didn't know why everything felt heavier than the day before. It was a quiet weight, stealthy, familiar, slipping into her steps, her breath, like a shadow she hadn't noticed returning. Yesterday, there had been something in Kai's eyes, a look that felt like a promise. You can change. But today all that was left was fog. She entered the salon again, her hair still holding the soft curls Kai had shaped, but the feeling, the quiet confidence of the first time, was gone. Every glance in the mirror reminded her nothing had really changed, just a surface, just a mask. The salon looked the same, soft lighting, calming music. But to Ellie, everything felt too loud. The murmur of clients, the shuffle of footsteps, the muted click of heels, they all crashed into her, each sound an echo of something she didn't know how to quiet. Ellie, Kai's voice behind her, steady as ever. "Ready for the shoot?" She turned, but something inside her recoiled. His gaze wasn't the same. It wasn't admiring, wasn't rehearsed. It was curious. Like he could sense something shifting in her, something even she couldn't name. When it was her turn in front of the camera, Ellie stood beneath the spotlight like someone caught in a place they didn't belong. Inside her, everything pulled. Inward, her body, her voice, her hope, shrinking in defense. Her hair was still perfect. Her makeup soft and careful, but the feeling remained, not enough. The lens stared back at her, cold and expectant. She smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It was something constructed, hollow. The kind of smile that says, "I'm trying, but..." "Not, I'm okay." Kai behind the camera. "Relax, Ellie, we're not just taking pictures, we're capturing you." But she couldn't relax. She stood there like a statue, her heart skipping its rhythm, her body tense with the ache of pretending. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "Makeup can't fix what's inside." Her voice was soft, but it hit the room like a falling stone, a truth long held in her chest finally slipping out. She stepped away. There were no tears, none that showed, but inside something had cracked wide open. She didn't want to look in the mirror anymore, didn't want to see the version of herself she'd tried so hard to assemble. She was tired of playing the part. She just wanted to disappear. Kai didn't stop her. He didn't chase or console. He only watched, quietly, from across the room, as she walked out of the shoot, and somehow that made her feel seen more deeply than any words could have. Back in the waiting room, Ellie sat down. Her wide-brimmed hat now felt like armor, heavy, concealing. Each step she'd taken felt like retreating from herself. Kai was already there, standing by the door, hands in his pockets, no surprise in his eyes as if he'd known. She dropped into the chair, exhausted, not physically, but from carrying the weight of always being almost enough. Time slowed. Outside, the world went on. Inside, she sat quietly and asked herself for the first time, what part of me still can't say yes to myself? The question had no answer, but maybe that was the point. Maybe it was the beginning. Kai returned after a while, holding a small envelope. He handed it to her without a word. Ellie looked at him, unsure. "Open it," he said. His voice was warm but calm, grounded. She unfolded the paper. It read simply, "Makeup can't change what you have, but it can help you remember what you've forgotten." She didn't reply, but something swelled in her chest. Not the hurt, not even relief, just recognition. Kai wasn't just a stylist. He was the first person who had looked at her, not as a canvas to improve, but as a person to remember, to return to. She didn't rush out this time. She stayed a little longer, let the silence settle around her like a soft cloak, and asked herself again, what is it I haven't been ready to believe? The answer didn't come, but maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of the real journey. Not the kind with flawless eyeliner or perfect photos, but the kind where you finally start walking toward yourself. Even if your steps are slow, even if you falter, even if you still don't feel ready, because sometimes the cracks we want to hide are where the light begins. After the unfinished photo shoot, the salon felt different, quiet in a way that wasn't just soundless but hollow. Kai didn't call Ellie, didn't send another appointment. He knew whatever she was facing couldn't be solved with a touch-up or another makeover. Some wounds don't need fixing, they need space. Time to live in the emptiness just revealed, not to escape it, but to understand when it became a part of you. What he didn't expect was that she had been the reason this entire journey began, long before their first meeting. Internal email to Kai Nakamura from Chloe, marketing assistant, Glowspace subject, user feedback from March, worth reading. Time, 11:49 p.m. 3 days after the shoot. Hi Kai, while sorting through the deeper user feedback archive for the personalization campaign, I found a short but striking comment from March. You should read it. Also, after seeing the photos from last week's Stylist test, I realized Ellie looked familiar. I double-checked her email address. It matches the user who submitted this feedback. Attached below, I'll let you feel it for yourself. Chloe Glowspace Beta User Feedback March. I don't want an app that makes me prettier. I want one that makes me feel like I exist, like I don't have to perform to be seen. If you ever build something like that, I'll be the first to believe again. Gantry Nikai sat in front of the screen for a long time. He didn't click, didn't respond, just sat there, letting the words echo in the space around him. 5 lines. That's all. But they had torn open something at the root of everything. Back in February, Glowspace had been just another beauty app. AR filters, skin tone palettes, aesthetic simulations backed by millions in funding, a machine chasing surface-level change. And still, they couldn't hold hearts. The team kept spinning in circles around words like AI optimization and beauty tech without realizing what they were missing. Then her message arrived. Soft, anonymous, unassuming. Not a complaint. Not a demand, just a whisper. And yet it made Kai stop and ask, am I helping women see themselves, or pulling them further away? He remembered that night, alone in his office, the sentence repeating over and over, I don't want. To perform to be seen, he deleted the pitch deck, rewrote the app's core concept, redefined the AI model, not based on beauty standards, but on the emotional data users shared. Glowspace, the place where Ellie had been invited for a makeover, was born from that shift. And now he knew, the voice behind that turning point was hers. He didn't know what to feel, a little stunned, a little guilty, but above all human. He wanted to tell her, to say, you were the one, to say, you changed more than you know. But how do you say to someone doubting her worth, you saved something? You ignited change in someone who had everything, but still hadn't understood what beauty meant. Unsent message, Glowspace app draft. Kai, Ellie. Ellie, I came across something today. A short message, a handful of words, but it changed the way I understood beauty. I think you wrote it. I don't know how to say this without making it feel like pressure, but if you're ever ready, I'd like to share a story with you. One that's about you, though maybe you've never heard it told this way before. Draft saved. Kai read it once more, then closed the screen. He knew. Some truths need to be spoken, but some need to be felt. And maybe she needed more time, like a tree waiting on the sun, before her heart could hear what had always been true. That afternoon, sunlight spread softly across the glass windows of the salon. A rare kind of quiet blanketed the space. No blow-dryers, no murmuring clients, no laughter threading through the air. Ellie arrived 30 minutes early, though she couldn't say why. Maybe it was the heaviness in her chest, or maybe, just maybe, she needed to be near the one place where she felt like she was slowly beginning to find herself. The salon was nearly empty. Kai hadn't come out yet. In the hush, she sat quietly, hands wrapped around a ginger tea, her thoughts drifting back to the night before, the moment that had begun to unravel something in her. Her room had looked the same as always. Neat, modest, the old laptop still perched at the corner of her desk. She hadn't meant to reopen the Glowspace website, but somehow her fingers moved on their own. A quiet pull, a tug of something unfinished. The homepage loaded. A video began playing. Our story. The narrator didn't appear on screen, but his voice was clear, low, measured in the way voices are when they mean what they say. Glowspace was born not to change how you look, but to remind you of what you already carry. Her heart paused. She had heard that voice before, not in a podcast, not on social media, but yesterday in the salon when he asked, "Have you ever felt beautiful?" She rewound the clip, once, twice. Every inflection confirmed it. It was Kai, and at the very end, a close-up. Just for a second, a hand turning a dark wooden pen under a shaft of light. She'd seen that pen before, every time he made tea, every time he waited for the water to boil. The next afternoon, she came back carrying something heavier than questions, not anger, just confusion, and a very human need for the truth. Kai emerged, just as he always did, holding a porcelain cup, his gaze calm, gentle, as if nothing had changed. "Ellie," he said, offering a soft smile. "You're early today." "Yeah." Her eyes didn't leave his. "I might have questions about the photo shoot." "No, about you." She pulled out her phone, opened the favorites folder, the thumbnail, founder's message. That voice, that pen, and that truth, she held it up. This is you, isn't it? Kai didn't dodge, didn't flinch. He simply stood still, eyes steady, and let out a breath that sounded more like release than regret, like a door, long closed, had finally creaked open. Yes, he said. It's me. The salon held its breath. Even the air seemed to still. 1 year ago, in a quiet boardroom on the 10th floor, Kai had stood before a whiteboard with that same wooden pen. Behind him, a failed campaign. High-tech, AI-powered, but heartless. No one stayed. No one saw themselves in it, and he'd said to the team, "We don't need to make people beautiful. We need to help them feel enough." Someone had asked, "And do you think anyone will be brave enough to show up as they really are?" He hadn't answered, but deep down he'd pictured someone, not a model, not an influencer, someone like her. And now, she was standing in front of him, wearing a clay-colored sweater, eyes steady, not afraid, but still. "Full, why didn't you tell me from the beginning?" Ellie asked. "Because I needed to know you were showing up for yourself. Not for me, not for the app, not for anyone else's idea of you." She blinked. "So what am I then, a test subject?" "No." He shook his head. "You're the reason I started over." Silence, but not cold, just deep. She thought back to that first day, his question. "Have you ever felt beautiful?" Now she understood. It hadn't been casual. It had been a mirror, held up by someone who already believed in her, long before she ever walked through the door. At last, she spoke, carefully, like every word was being chosen from a place inside her still forming. "I don't want to walk away, but I need to know this time where I really stand." Kai nodded. "No more hiding," he said. "Not from me. Not from yourself." Ellie stepped out of the salon, not quickly, not slowly, her posture unchanged, but her gaze finally lifted. The truth had stung, but it had also unshackled something, because once you know you're no longer being kept in the dark, the direction of your life begins to shift. Ellie didn't sleep that night. Not because she was sad, not because she was angry, she was just still. Her mind looped through fragments. Kai's gaze, the slow click of a camera shutter, the first words he ever said to her. "Have you ever felt beautiful?" Now it all made a kind of sense she hadn't seen before, and now she knew. She hadn't just been randomly chosen. She'd been the reason. The next morning it rained, light and steady. Ellie returned to the salon in a charcoal grey coat, hair pulled back, face bare. Kai didn't greet her with words, only a glance. There was nothing left to hide, and nothing to explain. They both knew. This was the day they couldn't avoid. "You said I was the reason you started over." Ellie began. "What did you mean?" Kai gestured toward the back room, the same space where every makeover had taken place. But today, it was empty. Just the chair, the mirror, and light that didn't try too hard. "I'll tell you," he said. "If you're ready." She nodded. He sat across from her, hands folded, voice steady. Glowspace used to be just a tech product. Pretty filters, shiny effects, clever AI. But one night I read a piece of feedback, anonymous, just a few lines. But I couldn't sleep after that. He paused. The memory still close to the surface. "I don't want an app that makes me prettier. I want one that makes me feel like I exist." Ellie blinked. The words struck something in her, familiar, like something once whispered into the dark. "You wrote that," Kai continued. "That message made me stop, made me start again. From beauty to clarity, from editing to honoring. You were the reason I reimagined Glowspace, and the reason I stepped out of my office, chose to meet people one by one. People like you." She didn't speak. Her chest tightened, not from shock, but from something gentler and deeper, the realization that her quiet words had mattered. "No one's ever told me that anything I said changed something," she murmured. "Your makeover," she added, "was it a test?" Kai didn't flinch. "A confirmation. I needed to know if my heart was still aligned with this journey. I couldn't choose someone to represent truth if they hadn't lived their own." Ellie looked at her hands. These were the hands that had once curled to hide her reflection, that had covered her cheeks out of shame, that had, unknowingly, written a sentence that would shift someone else's path. All her questions had been answered. Now, she had one left. But it wasn't for him. What do I want my next step to be? Kai seemed to sense her wrestling. If you want to step away, I'll understand, he said softly. But if you're willing, not just for yourself, but for others like you. He didn't finish. The silence made space for her to choose. No persuasion, no pressure, just space. Ellie looked up. Outside, the wind whistled past the glass. The sky wasn't sad. It was honest, muted in a way that made things seem more real. No one's ever chosen me, she said. Not for the spotlight, not to represent anything. I'm used to stepping back, to disappearing. You never disappeared, Kai said quietly. You don't know me, she said. You saw a version of me you needed for your project. Maybe, he admitted. But the part I saw was the part even you forgot was there. She stood, slowly, looked in the mirror. No makeup. No angles. For the first time in a long while, she didn't search for flaws. She didn't scan for the least bad side. She just looked and saw a person who had asked, spoken, dared to exist. Then she turned to Kai, lips gently pressed together. I'm not sure I'm ready, she said. But I won't disappear. Kai nodded, a smile rising. Not triumphant, but quiet, the kind you give when something true is finally seen. Some moments don't arrive with certainty. They arrive with courage. Ellie hadn't been chosen for perfection. She was chosen for the fear, the fracture, and the unshakable truth she didn't know she carried. If you've ever stood at the edge of a decision, with your heart shouting yes and your fear screaming no, if you've ever wanted to step back because you thought you weren't enough, then maybe you are like Ellie, not perfect, but very, very real, and that just maybe is enough to begin again. Ellie had never stood on a stage, not because she hadn't had the chance, but because she'd always chosen the shadows. In the quiet corners, you don't have to strain to be seen. You don't have to compete to matter. You can simply be without risk, without comparison. She had once turned down class presentations, skipped her own graduation, believed for years that the spotlight was a place built for someone else. But this afternoon, she stood behind the velvet curtain of a grand auditorium, a microphone in hand, heart steady, ready to tell her story. No filters, no script, no mask. Just her, as she is. It began a few days ago, in the final conversation she had with Kai at the salon. You don't have to be ready to step into the light, he'd said. You just need enough courage to stop hiding. Since then, Ellie had carried those words like a small stone in her pocket, light enough not to weigh her down, but real enough to press against her palm whenever she needed to remember. She had been hidden once, but not anymore. The event was the launch of Glowspace's new campaign, Unfiltered Faces, an honest tribute to those who never sought attention, never chased applause, but whose realness made others look inward and feel seen. Ellie had been asked to speak. She almost declined, but then she remembered the words she once wrote, quietly, anonymously, words that had shifted everything. I don't want an app that makes me prettier. I want to feel like I exist. If the quieter version of her had been brave enough to say that, then surely this version, the one patched with light, stitched with silence turned voice, could be brave enough to say it again. Out loud. Backstage was dimly lit. Kai stood off to the side, her familiar presence. He wasn't in a stylist's coat today, just a simple suit. He held his wooden pen in one hand, calm but unreadable. Ellie saw him. She nodded. That was enough. Everything that needed to be said had already been spoken, and everything else could live in a shared glance. Her name was called, the room paused, a few hands clapped. She walked forward, not triumphant, not timid, just present. She wore no gown, no makeup, no high gloss or dramatic entrance, just a soft brown linen dress, her hair tied back and a bare face, exactly as she had been the first time she stepped into the salon. The lights hit her full on. But this time, she didn't look away. She spoke, gently, honestly, not trying to impress. She didn't say transformation or empowerment or inspiration. She told a story, a simple one, of a girl who had once avoided eye contact, who feared mirrors, who lived like a pencil sketch drawn too lightly to leave a mark, and how, step by quiet step, not through magic, but through being seen by someone who chose not to look away, she began to reappear to herself. The room didn't erupt after every sentence. There were no thunderous claps. But in the front row, a woman dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Few rows back, a young girl was writing down every word, and at the edge of the curtain, Kai stood still, no longer spinning his pen. He just watched, and in his chest, something rang louder than applause. Ellie closed her speech with a sentence as soft as it was certain. "I'm not standing here because I found my beauty. I'm standing here because I finally stopped running from it." She stepped off stage slowly. No rush. Each step light but grounded. No one followed her. No camera zoomed in. But she knew. Somewhere in that room, someone was beginning to believe they too might be enough to step forward. Have you ever felt like the quiet one in a room full of voices, like the spotlight was too bright, too big, too far from where you belonged? If so, you're standing on the same edge Ellie just crossed, and like her, you get to choose not to be flawless, not to be fearless, just to be real. When Ellie stepped off the stage that afternoon, there were no thunderous applause, no camera flashes, no one rushing forward to ask for a photo. But none of that was needed, because something quieter, something far more enduring, had happened. She had stayed with herself, fully. After Ellie's talk, the event went on. Other speakers took the stage. Other stories were told, but somewhere in that auditorium her presence lingered, like the faint trace of ginger tea in a warm, closed room. You couldn't see it, but you could feel it. Kai didn't return to the stage. He stayed behind, leaning against a white wall backstage, his eyes still fixed on the doorway Ellie had just walked through. He knew the most important moments rarely arrive with applause. They come in stillness, and they stay. Upstairs, in the quiet of his studio office, the world of Kai returned. To its familiar pace, a wooden desk, neat stacks of paper, pastel sticky notes, a laptop paused mid-analysis. He sat down, opened the email again, that old feedback from a user signed E.L. The words remained. "I don't want an app that makes me prettier, I just want to feel seen." He closed his eyes, not to recall, but to exhale, the kind of breath you take at the end of a long journey, only to realize it was never about reaching someone else. It was always about returning to what you knew deep down, what mattered, what was real. Across the city, Ellie walked across a narrow bridge, a place she often came to when the world felt too large for her to carry. All at once, but this time, she wasn't hiding, she was breathing. The wind played in her hair. A single leaf landed on her shoulder. She didn't brush it off. She touched it gently, as if reminding herself, "I'm still here. I'm still soft. I'm still living." Back. At Glowspace, Kai opened a private log file, a habit he rarely shared with anyone. Entry, E.L., last day. She didn't just change how she looked, she changed how we look at everyone. From asking, "How can we make them beautiful?" to asking, "How can we help them see that they already are?" Elsewhere in the building, the creative team was editing the event footage. May, the youngest editor, paused on the final frame of Ellie on stage, standing still, not waiting for anything, but unmistakably clear. She took a screenshot, printed it, pinned it on the edit room wall dues and wrote beneath it, "She didn't just walk away, she walked in her own skin, finally." A week later, Ellie's speech was posted on Glowspace's official channel. In the comments, hundreds of voices appeared, most of them women, sharing things small in words, but vast in weight. "First time I looked at my ID photo and didn't flinch. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. I didn't leave the house that day, but this video made me try again." None of them knew Ellie personally, But they saw themselves in her words. Inkai didn't reply to any of the comments, but he read every single one, and he knew that for all its algorithms and code, Glowspace had done the most human thing a tool could do, not change anyone, just remind them of what had always been there. Ellie didn't become famous. She went back to her old job, still quiet, still preferring tea over coffee, still choosing emails over phone calls. But there was something new. Each morning she began her day standing in front of the mirror, not to inspect, not to fix, but simply to say, "Hi again. It's us, the real us." Thank you for walking with Ellie through this journey. If her story touched something soft and deep within you, subscribe for more quiet, luminous slices of life where ordinary becomes extraordinary, because someone dared to be real. And, maybe like Ellie, what you need is simply one moment to feel seen.